everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. Today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the brand new remake slash reimagining slash just the musical version of said movie mixed with a remake of it as well in Mean Girls, which the original film came out 20 years ago, which is just insane to think about. It makes me feel a lot older than what I actually am. But that film opened up to around $35 million worldwide, which is okay. It didn't cost all that much to make, and so whether it makes its money back or not is still a question mark. But I think that right now we could say that it seems to be a pretty strong likelihood that that could, end up happening, but doesn't look like it's going to be a huge moneymaker, which personally makes me happy because I'm still of the mindset where I thought that the first original film was fantastic. It did not need any reimagining or anything whatsoever, and seeing the film fail, or at least not do as well as it could do, would just personally make me happy. That little anecdote there. We also had a new film from Jason Statham, Beekeeper, coming out as well. A new David Ayer film, which is not really doing much of anything, at least as far as what we have right now. And also, they're staying very mum and very hush on what the film actually cost to make, seeing that the film Air from Amazon Studios, I should say more accurately, cost around $90 million to make. I have to imagine that Beekeeper probably going to be $50 million or more as far as budget goes. And so we look at a movie like $37 million and not looking like that's going to be a huge moneymaker either. But Wonka is the film that is still making a lot of buzz worldwide, topping $500 million worldwide. I don't think a lot of us thought that was ever going to happen for this movie, though we obviously saw some of the early signs with the film doing very well week to week, and that absolutely is continuing with it still showing up in the top 5 for films. So we'll talk about all of these things and a bunch of other updates as well. Before we go any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button, also smash the rumble button as well, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time a video or live stream goes live on the channel. So I would also first start off by just talking about, because I always forget about it, that right now the Raven Award nominations, I'm right now we're accepting those, and so if you want to check out the top pinned comment in the comment section below, you can find a link to fill out this form, and this is where you can put your best and worst of movies in 2023. Obviously, it's the 2024 awards because that's when it's taking place, but all these are for films and TV and things like that in 2023. So go ahead and fill this out, put some nominations out there. We're still collecting these for another week or two, and so if you want to get those nominations in there, I would do so as quickly as possible. All right, now getting into the actual box office talk. And so, again, Nance, good old Nance over at Deadline, talking about how Wonka is doing very well. But first, starting off talking about how Wonka is continuing its sweet run, crossing $500 million globally this weekend with a worldwide cumulative total through Sunday of $505, including $329 million from the international box office, with Korea, which has a fondness for Hollywood musicals, still to release at the end of the month. We always have to remember, though, of course, that when it comes to delayed releases, sometimes that can absolutely have an impact on whatever potential amount of money could be made. And also, we also recognize that the movie markets in all countries, not just the United States and not just the domestic, have changed quite a bit over the past several years, and people aren't nearly as drawn to the Hollywood fare that has been coming out recently. Wonka, of course, as I've mentioned, though, seems to be hitting a sweet spot with some of the, some of the younger audiences, some of the family audiences as well, as this really has been kind of the winner of the first Christmas holiday going into just winter season, as it were, especially with all of the snow out there. By the way, stay safe if you are in those areas being impacted by snow and cold weather right now. We actually have a chance of snow down here starting tomorrow into Tuesday, and so we're excited because we barely get snow, but for those that get it a lot, I can understand why that could be a little bit annoying. It goes on to say that the second frame of 2024 is also offering a pair of new titles in The Beekeeper. The former, directed by David Ayer, buzzed into 49 markets, estimating $20.4 million in like-for-like markets, excluding China and Russia. The start is 27% above Wrath of Man, 29% bigger than Plane, and 23% over the first John Wick. And again, these are all numbers without adjustment for inflation. The global 3-day total is at 37.1. In IMAX, The Beekeeper grossed $8.1 million. And so, as I mentioned before, this is a movie that is going to be making some money in some locations, but the budget is definitely going to be a question mark as far as whether or not the film will have any actual profitability to it whatsoever. Going into that, let's go ahead and go into the list of movies, the top 10 movies from the numbers.com list. First, looking at the domestic numbers here. So Mean Girls came in the number one spot with $28 million domestic. So there's about $7,000 per screen. Really not as strong as you would think for a movie like this. This was a film that on paper sure had you made this movie, again, had you made even a sequel, right, a dedicated sequel to Mean Girls back in its heyday, I think that you probably would have had a pretty strong amount, pretty strong showing, as that movie, the original film, has not only, did very well as far as its initial run, as far as getting a lot of people out, but also since then has been seen by countless people. Even high school students today still know about Mean Girls, whether it is from the original movie or whether it's from the Broadway musical. So the fact that they decided to, after 20 years, do a remake, reimagining, taking the music from the musical, but still keeping some of the other elements that are unique to the movie versus the musical, to me, it just doesn't really, again, make a lot of logical sense. And so that's why a movie like this is not something I think that Hollywood should be awarded for making. I would rather them, stick with original concepts, or at the very least, actually, smart, if it's going to be a quote reimagining, actually smart reimaginings that, are actually kind of pushing the realm of what the, property is. Something like a built in the same universe type movie, similar to what we're going to see later on this year with Ballerina, right? It's in the John Wick universe, so it's taking, the idea, the concepts, and the world building from that universe, but it's also going to tell its own story as well. That's the kind of stuff I would much rather see, and of course, original fare as well, instead of the kind of nonsense that Mean Girls seems to be pushing. The Beekeeper from MGM, which is Amazon, 16.7 million domestic there. So again, coming in the number 2 spot, but no budget means it's hard to really say whether this is good or not. The film Wonka is once again still in the top 3. Remember, it's been at the top 1 spot and for several weeks now. The fact that it's been out now for 5 weeks and it still is out at over 3,300 screens. So you're looking at some of the highest theater numbers right now still for a film that's been out for 5 weeks compared to other films that have been out for a lot less time, for films that have even just recently come out. I think indicates that this is a good sign for this movie for Warner Brothers. Now, unfortunately, Warner Brothers does have a lot of other issues. For instance, The Color Purple has dropped off quite precipitously. As you can see, it's dropped all the way down to technically the number 13 spot there. They're already pulling it from theaters, over 2,000 theaters, in fact, after just 3 weeks of release. So this movie is going to likely be a $100 million loss for them. And so having, obviously, a winner in Wonka is a good thing, but it's not going to make up for the fact that they've got not only in The Color Purple, but also with Aquaman and Lost Kingdom, 2 massive financial flops for them. Anyone But You is number 4 movie. This is, again, still holding very strong after 4 weeks. This is kind of that little engine that could. It's not making huge tracts of money, huge tracts of land, right? But it is doing well enough for the film to absolutely still be in the conversation. I don't think anyone seeing the promos for this movie would have thought, oh, this is going to be a top 5 movie 4 weeks into its release. But it's still punching above its weight. It seems to be that film, though, that couples are going to see. And there is definitely, I think we can tell from this, there is definitely a hunger for those kinds of movies, as they've not been nearly as common in years past. The film Migration from Universal is also still in the top 5. This film not holding nearly as strong or doing nearly as well, I think, as what we could say about Wonka, for instance. Obviously, the numbers are quite different. Migration at $85 million domestic, whereas Wonka's at $176. But, of course, we'll dive further into the charting on whether Migration is close to breaking even, or, kind of what the deal is with that one. But it's looking like this is going to be definitely a lower grossing movie for a Universal Illumination film. This is nowhere going to be close to anything like Minions or Despicable Me. But for me, for something like this to be, an unknown entity, for it to only really have the name of Illumination attached to it, again, seems to be doing better. And because Universal does not overspend on their films, especially their animated films, like places like Disney, for instance, do, it's going to be a lot easier to make that kind of money back. Aquaman, however, from Warner Brothers, again, dropping another 50% here, dropped from 800 screens. And remember that the big problem with Aquaman is it's got a cost problem and it's got a market problem. It's making most of its money internationally, a huge portion of it coming from China, and studios just do not get that much money back from those markets. I know that there's still some people out there that are still shilling for this movie and are still, for some reason, just denying that reality, but it is a fact that when it comes to what studios get back, it is a lot less from those markets. And so Aquaman is definitely not in a good position. $100 million domestic might sound okay on paper, but for a movie where the first film made over $1 billion and this film's not even going to get, close to half, I could imagine, of that number, and again, most of it coming from international and also coming from China, shows you why this film is set to be a flop. Night Swim from Universal at $4.6 million, a 60% drop there in its second week of release. So definitely a pretty massive drop. Have not heard too many great things about that. You have, it looks like, a I would assume a Bollywood movie, Guntur Karam, coming in the number 8 spot, only 800 screens. So again, a pretty good per theater ratio there. Boys in the Boat from MGM, I've heard some pretty good things about so far. 37% hold there in its third week of release. So that's pretty good. This is not in my charting because this is the kind of movie where I probably won't add it in until after it's done with its actual theatrical in order to find things like budgets and things like that, because it was, had that independent feel to it. And then the number 10 movie is actually a brand new film, The Book of Clarence, which to me just came across immediately as just offensive. It is a story, it's a fictionalized story about basically someone pretending to be Jesus, I guess is the best way I can really describe it. It just did not look interesting at all. 2,000 screens. No one has gone to see it. This film cost a lot more also than what it should have. And so this film looks like it's probably going to end up being a flop for Sony. And then I did want to give an update on The Iron Claw. This film has definitely gotten a lot closer to breaking even. It still has a little ways to go though, so if you've not seen the film yet and it's still playing near you, it's losing theaters unfortunately, go check it out if you can. All right, individually, the Mean Girls film, $34.5 million worldwide. Again, as I mentioned, based off of its budget, this is okay as far as the start is concerned, but I hope that the weeks are not kind to the movie. Just again, in principle, just in concept alone, I just have to resist a movie like that. The Beekeeper is $16.7 million domestic. Again, is what's being reported right now by the numbers. We don't have a budget yet. Can't say for sure whether that's good or not. $505 million for Wonka. And again, this does have a somewhat similar problem to that of Aquaman. For those wondering why is it that I'm saying Aquaman is a flop and this one is not. Well, remember, this film cost a lot less than Aquaman did. That's a big starter. And also because this movie is making a lot more of its money in other markets outside of China. So it does have a China presence, but of that, hundreds of millions of dollars, 329 million it's made, only 5 has come from China. Whereas a film like Aquaman, it's like over 100 of its 100 million of its internationals come from China. So again, Wonka is also, as I mentioned last week, I believe it's started to make profits, so it's just going to add to its profits at this point. Anyone What You at $77 million, as you can see historically, doing so much better compared to its opening weekend. Migration, $172 million worldwide. Again, this film cost $72 million, 2.4 times its budget, so it's on the cusp of breaking even. We'll have to wait and see if it's able to get pushed over the edge, but it's looking like that will be a possibility, but definitely not a big win for them. Again, when a movie like that, you would expect them to want to see, some decent profits. So to have, barely breaking even, maybe have just a small amount of profit when everything is said and done, definitely not where they would want to be. The film Aquaman 2, Aquaman the Lost Kingdom, or just Climate Change, the movie, $373 million worldwide as it stands right now, which is only 1.8 times its budget. So not only on paper is the film not yet got to its break-even point, but even if it did, if it's going at this same rate, with, again, a huge portion of that coming, look at this, from China, right? 57 million. Sorry, I said earlier incorrectly that it was 100 million. So again, $57 million coming there from China. So it's looking like it might be slowing down there, actually. So maybe it'll cap out somewhere between 57 and 75. Still not doing really well enough anywhere else. But that's the reason why also this film is just going to be a financial failure. Night Swim, $29.7 million, actually on the low end historically there. And Book of Clarence, $2.5 million, just no interest in that whatsoever. Iron Claw, phenomenal movie. Make sure to check it out. All right, now going to some charting, because we love doing charting here over at OMB Reviews. First off, Night Swim. We now have the 2-week number, and so we can project with $29.7 million in its 2 weeks, we're going to project that this film will make somewhere between $42 and $59 million, if I had to guess, as far as where the film will likely end up based off of historical standards. And that means the film will probably be able to make somewhere between $2 and $13 million in profits. So even though the film has not gotten the best reviews, I've not heard the best things about the film from people who have seen it, it is right on the cusp of being able to break even, as you can see, right around $4 million in the red as of right now. But right now, with the way it's tracking, if it follows even most historical films, historical standards, I should say, in film, and it sees a 70% essentially drop, like the vast majority of the film's money being made in the first 2 weeks of release, it still has that opportunity to make a little bit of profit. But a movie like this, where it doesn't cost a whole lot, is a movie you want to make a lot of profit on, not just a little bit of profit. So I think Night Swim, even if it makes that money, still will not be really a huge financial success by any means. Now, we also get to talk about Mean Girls. So this film, again, a break-even point of around $90 million. The film only cost around $36 million, so not a huge budget there. Making $34.5 million on paper, again, sounds fine. But remember, it does still need to make $90 million worldwide to actually break even. And so at $33 million right now in the red, I can say that Depends on what that week 2 number is. That's going to ultimately determine. That's usually what the case is for most movies, but especially for a film like this where there's just a lot of question marks. There's a lot of especially questions when it comes to the audience for this movie. Is there really a dedicated audience for this film? I know I talked to a lot of high school students, the ones that I work with, right, who have, opinions on Mean Girls, the original film. And I didn't really get a sense that a lot of them were really excited for this movie. So again, that's anecdotal evidence really, but I think that it is still, very, very much, kind of a good explanation and a good bit of insight into, where this film might actually end up falling. Because if you don't have that audience that the film is geared towards and did very well with in the initial run of the film, then the question again is, who is your audience? Beekeeper only at $16.7 million based on what's been reported so far. No budget, can't say much else about it. And The Book of Clarence, this film cost $40 million to make, meaning its break even is 100 and it only opened to 2.5. So let's just say right now we could probably have a pretty good estimate to say this film is going to be a box office flop and is not going to make its money back, but we'll not have the official announcement on that until next weekend. A couple other updates. Ferrari is still a $100 million flop. Color Purple, still a $100 million flop. Migration, as I mentioned, getting very, very close to breaking even, but still has a ways to go there. Iron Claw on the cusp of breaking even there. Anyone But You, $9.2 million in profits. So this film is a chart breaker, and as you can see, it has done better than what my initial anticipation was. But remember, this film did better down the stretch. So therefore, because of that, that's why the 2-week chart that I typically use did not account for that, right? I account for films that double the amount of money it's made in the first 2 weeks. But if you do more than double, as this film did, this film likely by the end of the year will be one of the better performing films compared to its first 2 weeks. Right now, 40% is what it made in the first 2 weeks comparatively. So right now, 60% of all the money it's made so far has been made after those 2 weeks, which most films tend not to do. Most films tend to be front-loaded, and so, again, kudos to them. And then lastly, Aquaman, as you can see, still right now $83 million in the red. But remember, this is using the metric that is not accounting for the cuts from China and the cuts for the international. So this film is still, when you take those into account, well over $100 million in the red and is not going to be making that money back. But those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts about these numbers? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, have you seen films like The Book of Clarence, The Beekeeper, Mean Girls? Are any of them actually worth going to watch, going to see? I've heard some mixed things about The Beekeeper. Some people had fun with it. But as you know, for me, when it comes to the numbers game, I got to actually know what the numbers are before I can really give any actual quantifiable thoughts. And so let me know your thoughts about that or anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button, smash the button as well. Check out the pinned comment as well if you want to get your nominations out there for the Raven Awards, and we'll get the ballots out as soon as possible. We try and get as much in line with the Oscars as we can as far as dates are concerned, because we are indeed an Oscars boycott show. 6th annual one coming up very soon. You guys are amazing, beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless. And now for a very special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off with my Patreon Chosen members, Father Luca Illich, shout out to you, Father. Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider. And Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name. And to my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name. Mr. Roy and ZK-Man, check out his website, xtheboundaries.co. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, or if you want access to a giveaways channel on my Discord and plenty of other extra content as well, random crazy stuff out there, check out the YouTube memberships and other membership platforms in the top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.